The diner buzzed with quiet chatter, but Daniel Hayes couldn't take his eyes off the waitress moving between tables. She was young, late 20s, with brown hair pulled into a loose knot, her pale face shadowed by exhaustion. What struck him wasn't just her silence, but the absence of something so small, yet so telling: she never smiled. To most, it was easy to overlook, but Daniel had lived long enough to recognize when someone was carrying a weight too heavy to show the world. His daughter Lily, bright-eyed and full of innocence, noticed too. "Daddy," she whispered, "why doesn't she ever smile?" The question lodged in Daniel's chest, stirring memories of his own struggles. He didn't know then that the answer he would hear from the waitress would stay with him forever, and break him in ways he wasn't prepared for. The clatter of dishes and the low hum of conversations faded into the background as Emily made her way toward their booth. Her steps were soft, almost hesitant, as though every movement carried the invisible weight of something she had been holding for far too long. She clutched her notepad close, her shoulders slightly hunched beneath the oversized jacket slipping down her arm. Lily, with all the innocence of a child, smiled up at her warmly, expecting a smile in return. But Emily only gave a small nod, her lips pressed into a tight line. Daniel noticed immediately: the pale skin, the hollowness in her cheeks, the faint shadows beneath her eyes. More than that, he noticed the tremor in her hands as she slid the notepad out, trying to steady her fingers against the table. Her voice, when it came, was polite but distant, practiced words spoken like a script she had repeated countless times. "What can I get you?" she asked softly, her tone devoid of warmth, as though her heart wasn't in the room with her body. Daniel ordered something simple for himself and Lily, but his gaze didn't leave her face. He searched, as if trying to see past the mask she wore so carefully, to glimpse the story she carried in silence. There was a fragility about her, one that stirred something deep within him. Beside him, Lily tilted her head, her voice a hushed whisper only for her father. "Daddy," she looked so sad. Daniel reached across the table, gently wrapping his hand around his daughter's small one. He leaned close, his voice tender. "Sometimes people hide their stories, sweetheart." What he didn't say, but felt with certainty, was that he recognized this silence. It wasn't emptiness. It was survival, the silence of someone fighting battles unseen. Lily's innocent eyes followed Emily each time she passed their booth, her small hands resting on the edge of the table as though waiting for the right moment. The little girl's curiosity grew with every glance, the tired sway of Emily's steps, the way her eyes never quite met anyone else's, the quiet heaviness that clung to her like a shadow. Finally, Lily couldn't hold it in any longer. She leaned forward, her voice soft but clear, carrying an honesty only a child could offer. "Miss, you should smile more. Smiles make the world brighter." Her words slipped into the air like a gentle song, rising above the hum of conversations and the clatter of dishes. Emily froze mid-step. The tray in her hands trembled slightly, her shoulders stiffening as if bracing against a memory. For a long moment, she didn't turn. When she finally did, her pale lips parted, caught between surprise and a response she couldn't find. Her brown eyes flickered toward Lily's hopeful face, and for the briefest second, something cracked, the faintest spark of emotion breaking through her mask. But almost instantly, her gaze dropped, retreating behind the familiar shield of silence she had worn for so long. Daniel noticed. He leaned forward, his breath caught in his chest, watching her with quiet intensity. He had lived long enough to recognize pain when it slipped through the cracks. Emily's voice came at last, barely more than a whisper. "Thank you." The word was fragile, almost lost in the noise of the diner, but Daniel heard it. Then she turned quickly, disappearing back into her duties. Lily tilted her head, puzzled by the strange exchange. Daniel reached for her hand gently, his heart tightening. He knew then, Emily's silence wasn't emptiness. It was survival. And behind it lay wounds too deep for words. The next time Emily returned to their booth, she moved with her usual quiet precision, balancing the plates carefully in her hands. Yet Daniel, ever observant, noticed the slight tremor in her fingers as she set them down on the polished table. The warm glow of the diner lights cast a soft halo around her, but it couldn't hide the heaviness etched into her face. Her shoulders sagged as though each shift demanded more than she had left to give. Lily's curious eyes followed every detail. The innocence in her gaze remained unshaken, untouched by the layers of silence surrounding Emily. Looking up with a gentleness only a child could carry, she asked softly, "Are you okay, miss?" Emily froze, her pale lips tightening as though holding back words. For a moment, Daniel thought she would simply nod and walk away, retreating into the safety of her silence. But then, something shifted. Her lips parted, and her voice emerged, trembling, fragile. "It's been a long time since anyone asked me that," she whispered, her words nearly lost beneath the chatter of the diner. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his eyes steady, his tone warm and kind. "Sometimes we forget how much we matter to the world," he said, each word carrying quiet conviction. Emily's brown eyes lifted to meet his for the first time. For an instant, her guarded mask cracked, and Daniel saw beneath it, not just exhaustion, but heartbreak. Loneliness. Years of carrying unspoken battles pressed into silence. The connection was brief but powerful, like a fragile flame sparking in the dark. Lily, sensing the weight of what her father had seen, squeezed his hand under the table, her own small gesture grounding the moment. And in that instant, Emily was no longer invisible. Daniel sat back in the booth, his fingers lightly drumming against the table as silence settled between them. The hum of the diner carried on, the clinking of cutlery, the low murmur of conversations, but for him, everything narrowed to the weight of Emily's words. They lingered in his chest, heavy and unshakable, echoing with a pain he recognized too well. He glanced at Lily, who was watching him with wide, earnest eyes. She didn't speak, but her expression said everything. "Do something, Daddy." Daniel exhaled slowly, the decision forming in his heart before it reached his hands. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a folded bill, and placed it gently onto the receipt. But instead of sliding it away, he paused, the moment stretching. His eyes shifted to the napkin beside him. With steady hands, he picked up a pen and wrote carefully, each word chosen with purpose, "Your smile matters. Don't forget that the world needs you." He hesitated for just a second, then tucked the note under the edge of Emily's cup, making sure it would not be overlooked. When Emily returned a few minutes later, she moved with her familiar weariness, reaching first for the dishes. But then her trembling hand brushed the napkin. She paused, frowning softly, before unfolding it. Her tired eyes scanned the words slowly, and Daniel saw the change immediately. Her breath hitched. Her lips quivered. Her eyes, glassy with unshed tears, shimmered under the warm golden lights. For the first time that night, her face transformed, not into a mask of forced politeness, but into something raw and unguarded. She lifted her gaze toward Daniel. He didn't speak, didn't move beyond a quiet, reassuring nod. In that fragile exchange, silence was no longer emptiness. It was healing. Emily stood frozen, the note trembling in her hands. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The world around her, the clinking dishes, the chatter of customers, blurred into silence. She looked at Daniel and Lily, sitting patiently in their booth, not asking for anything in return. Her lips quivered as the dam she had built for years threatened to break. And then, slowly, almost shyly, she smiled. It wasn't wide, but it was real. Lily gasped softly, tugging on her father's sleeve. "Daddy," she smiled, she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Daniel's heart swelled as he met Emily's eyes. He nodded gently, silently telling her it was okay to keep smiling, that her story mattered. Emily wiped at her tears quickly, embarrassed but lighter than she had felt in years. That single smile carried the weight of healing, of being seen, of being reminded that kindness still existed in the world. As Daniel and Lily rose to leave, Emily whispered, her voice fragile but sincere, "Thank you, for reminding me I'm still human." Daniel placed his hand on his daughter's shoulder and replied softly, "Sometimes all it takes is a smile to change everything." That night, Emily returned to her shift carrying something new. Her steps felt a little lighter, her silence less heavy. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't invisible, because kindness had found her.